Now coming to the timing, where to inflate the balloon with regard to ECG and the arterial trace. Okay. In ECG, it has to be correlated with the diastolic phase, that is at the end of T wave, and in case of arterial line, it should be on the dichrotic notch. That is very important. Now coming to the timing, where you inflate the balloon. You can do it with two ways. One, you time it with the electrocardiogram. Another one is you time with the arterial trace. With regard to arterial trace, it is the dichrotic notch which is the onset of diastole. So, you time the balloon inflation at the diastole and deflate in the systole. With regard to ECG, again QRS you should deflate, and at the end of T wave you should inflate. You should know the diastolic phase in the ECG and the systolic phase with the QRS complex, and you should time the inflation and deflation accordingly. Usually there is an auto mode which senses the timing and inflates and deflates the balloon accordingly. If you have an early inflation, here this is the inflation, the dichrotic notch will be somewhere here, but you can see an early diastolic inflation. The balloon has inflated before the dichrotic notch. So, what happens? Here you can see the balloon inflated just before the dichrotic notch. Dichrotic notch will be somewhere here. So, early diastolic inflation is the inflation of the intra-aortic balloon before dichrotic notch. The diastolic augmentation encroaches onto the systole and it will be very difficult to distinguish. And what are the physiological effect which happens with early diastolic inflation? There is a premature closure of aortic valve, potential increase in left ventricular end diastolic volume, end diastolic pressure as well as pulmonary capillary wedge pressure. There is an increase left ventricular wall stress as well as afterload. There will be aortic regurgitation and your myocardial oxygen demand is going to increase. These are all the effect of early diastolic inflation. Now coming to late diastolic inflation. Here you can see the inflation happening very late after the dichrotic notch. Here the inflation of the intra-aortic balloon pump is after the dichrotic notch. Normally the inflation should happen here, but the inflation is happening here. Thereby, in late inflation, there is that sharp V which is seen is absent. The physiological effect is your coronary artery perfusion is suboptimal. Now come to early deflation. The balloon deflates earlier than the required time. Here the deflation of the balloon is seen as a sharp decrease after diastolic augmentation. Here you can see the rapid decrease because of early deflation. There is suboptimal diastolic augmentation. And another important thing is the assisted end diastolic pressure may be equal or less than the unassisted aortic end diastolic pressure, and the assisted systolic pressure may increase than the unassisted systolic pressure. The physiological effect is going to be suboptimal coronary perfusion. There is a potential for retrograde coronary and carotid flow and suboptimal afterload reduction. The myocardial oxygen demand is also going to increase. Now coming to late deflation. The deflation is happening very late. Here the deflation is delayed. The assisted end diastolic pressure may be equal to the unassisted end diastolic pressure. The rate of assisted systole is prolonged, that is very important. The diastolic augmentation is widened. The physiological effect is your afterload reduction, which is the main aspect of deflation is essentially absent. And there is going to be increased myocardial oxygen consumption because the left ventricle is ejecting against a greater resistance and a prolonged isovolumic contraction phase. And the balloon may impede left ventricular ejection and increases the afterload. Actually, the deflation is done to reduce the afterload. By deflating inlet, all the beneficial effect of deflation is lost.